This is God. God has existed from all eternity past. He is the unchanging essence of perfection, complete in holiness, wisdom, and power. One day, he decided he wanted other creatures to love and worship him. So he created people and placed them in his spiritual realm with him, where they spoke to him face to face and lived in perfect joy communing with him. Thus they had a clear and unmistakable relationship with their Heavenly Father. But they also had free will, so occasionally someone might commit what would be considered a sin against God or a fellow person. And when they did, God would respond with a proportional, nuanced level of rebuke and correction, carefully chosen to steer them back toward Him. This worked pretty effectively. After all, He was God, and there was little reason things should careen out of control under His leadership. But if for some reason a person's behavior became dangerously problematic, and it was clear they would never listen to Him, His last resort would be to quickly and painlessly end that person's existence. However, God's instruction was so clear and His wisdom so evident to His followers that they rarely disobeyed. Thus He and His people enjoyed a blissful, harmonious eternity together. Or that's what would have happened. But right before He started creating stuff, God fell and hit His head. Now when He got up off the floor, He still wanted to create people to love and worship Him, and His goal was for them to spend eternity with Him in His spiritual realm. But He was still a little dazed. So what He did was this. Instead of creating people in His presence where He wanted them to be, He created a bubble of apparently self-contained reality that followed its own internally consistent rules, and called it the physical universe. It was there that He placed the souls of His people, stuffing them into physical bodies. Now, how many of these human souls would He create? Well, He actually didn't have a plan for this. Rather, He started by making 2 of them, then set it up so that every time humans decided to mash some of their body parts together, He would create a new soul. Now, God made it so that things tended to deteriorate and get destroyed within this physical universe. This included people's physical bodies. In fact, God's ultimate goal was for human bodies to end up being destroyed so that their souls could be freed to exit the physical universe and come join Him in the spiritual realm, which is actually where He wanted them to be in the first place. But not all humans would join Him. It all depended on what they did during that time they spent stuffed in their physical bodies. Some would make good choices, of course, while others would make bad choices. But rather than take a nuanced approach to these various behaviors and try to set people on a well-advised path of self-improvement that would turn them back to Him, He decided that even one single bad choice made them flatly irredeemable. But that's okay, because He had a reasonable common-sense solution to this problem, and that's that anybody could be forgiven whenever another physical creature was killed and drained of its blood. Then, in a stroke of absolute genius, He became His own Son and got killed and drained of His blood. And since His blood was the very best, it took care of everybody. Well, actually, it only took care of people who heard about it and acknowledged that they wanted it to count for them. Now, of course, God wanted His creation to be reconciled to Him, but He never felt quite urgent enough about it to appear and instruct any of them face to face. Instead, He gave people vague feelings that were indistinguishable from and often mistaken for their own thoughts. He also gave them a book that some people would have the chance to read and others wouldn't. Thus, it was legitimately possible that most people would never even have access to the third-hand rumors that His followers were lucky enough to hear about. What's more, the bubble of self-contained reality He created was so different and so separate from His spiritual realm that the humans there could very reasonably come to believe that their universe was all that existed. Most people, isolated within this little bubble, might never hear about Him and come to know Him. So God decided to tell a few people about Himself, then tell them to tell other people. Hopefully they would go out and do it. Because unfortunately, if a human didn't hear about God, believe in Him, and decide they wanted His blood sacrifice to count for them, and do all this in the brief window of time before their physical body happened to get destroyed, then instead of joining God in the spiritual realm, they would go to another realm God created, where they would burn in relentless torment for all eternity. Wow. God must have hit His head pretty hard, huh?